American soldier that revealed killings by the U.S. Army in Iraq and Afghanistan is formally charged. He faces life in prison. Furious Afghans tried to storm a U.S. base as the death toll from protests against the burning of the Holy Quran rises to 20. Demonstrations have also spread to Pakistan. And Israeli warplanes once again target the besieged Gaza Strip. At least 2 Palestinians are injured. You're watching the World News here on Press TV. We're coming to you live from our headquarters in Tehran. Many thanks for joining us this hour. Well, U.S. soldier Bradley Manning has been formally charged ahead of a court-martial that could sentence him to life in prison. 24-year-old Manning is accused of passing hundreds of thousands of military field reports from Iraq and Afghanistan to the whistleblower website WikiLeaks. He has been charged with 22 counts, including, quote, aiding the enemy. He allegedly turned over a trove of classified American documents to WikiLeaks in one of the most serious intelligence breaches in U.S. history. Earlier, we were joined by former Pentagon official Michael Maloof. Here's what he had to say about the charges Manning is facing.
Well, number one, it is an intelligence breach from the standpoint that classified information was leaked out. It's not WikiLeaks' fault. It would be the way the system runs, that it would be Manning's fault. Secondly, it is an embarrassment because much of the information that was leaked was not necessarily national security related. It was meant to hide embarrassments and embarrassing statements. But the fact that the system itself does not preclude or allow distinctions of that kind. The fact that it was classified thereby puts him in jeopardy, and probably he'll get a life sentence as a result of it.
In Afghanistan, angry protesters have tried to storm a U.S. military base during nationwide demonstrations against American troops' burning of Qur'ans. Police opened fire on protesters outside the Mersalam base in the eastern Laghman province, leaving several people wounded. An apology from U.S. President Barack Obama over the desecration of the Holy Quran has failed to temper the outrage of Afghans. So far, at least 20 people have been killed across the country in demonstration against the desecration by U.S. troops. Here's more.
3 days of angry protests nationwide. It all began after news came through that American troops had burned copies of the Quran at Bagram Air Base, a militarized airport north of the capital, Kabul. In the latest violent incident, Afghan forces opened fire on demonstrators in Kabul. Lawmakers in the country have condemned the desecration of the Quran by US forces, calling for a holy war against foreign troops. The anger has already led a man dressed in Afghan army uniform to kill 2 US troops. According to latest reports, anti-American rallies have now spread to Pakistan. Some observers blame the acts of desecration on the ignorance and even stupidity of US troops in Afghanistan.
One thing is what they did was senseless and stupid. And second, you can't be a guest in a country and offend the country by insulting their religion or culture or something holy for the people. Because of that, I think what the soldiers did was disgraceful, not only in the eyes of Muslims, but in the eyes of all religions around the world.
Yet others believe the mistreatment of other ethnicities and races is a historical hallmark of the darker side of the American culture, which has manifested itself in another form in invaded countries.
What's happening to Afghanis has historically happened to Native Americans and African Americans, of which I'm of both people. We had a ritual of murdering and mutilating people based on the color of their skin and a difference of religion. That was an American folk life. I mean, it was a way of life.
Thousands of people have attacked NATO bases in reprisal for the desecration of Islam's holy book. In a letter, US President Barack Obama has apologized to Afghan President Hamid Karzai for the torching of Quran copies, but such gestures have done little to calm the outrage in Afghanistan. What is represented by such sacrilegious acts is a total lack of respect for the religious and cultural values of Afghans, respect for the values of others, though the much easier alternative is perhaps to stop invading other countries in the first place.
Well, meanwhile, 2 Afghan laborers have told of how the U.S. troops at the Bagram Air Base burned the copies of the Holy Quran. Take a listen.
When we saw it, we said, let's see if they also have a Quran. When I first threw myself into the flames, I found several chapters of the Quran in the fire. Chapter 1, Chapter 2. All of them were thrown in together in the flames. It was in an area where there was American magazines. Everything there belonged to the Americans. It was their garbage. We threw ourselves there and took out copies of the Quran which were still on fire. We stood there and I said, up to the last drop of my blood, I would take out the Quran from there, regardless of how much power US forces have. I am not scared. I just want to defend my Quran and my God.
When US forces saw the state of people, of how deeply angry they were, translators went back to the Americans and told them, if these people are that angry here, imagine what will happen outside when they get out of here with the burnt Qurans.
Well, an apology from U.S. military officials has not calmed down outraged Muslims. Protests against the desecration of the Holy Quran have now spread to Pakistan. In the southwest of the country, demonstrators have slammed the burning of the holy book by American forces. Pakistanis took to the streets in Quetta on Thursday to condemn the, quote, despicable act. They chanted anti-American slogans and called friends of the U.S., quote, traitors. Protest leaders described the desecration as a conspiracy to hurt the feelings of Muslims. They urged war against the United States as invader of Muslim countries. Now, there's no end to the long ordeal of families of missing people in Pakistan. Their protest to seek the recovery of their loved ones has entered a second week. Our correspondent Kamran Yusuf has more from Islamabad.
This is the price the ordinary Pakistanis are paying in the US-led so-called war on terror. For last many days, the families of missing persons spent their day and nights under the open sky in the capital as a protest to seek the recovery of their loved ones. The families of missing persons have accused the country's intelligence agencies for illegally abducting people at the behest of the US.
ये एजेंसियों और ये अमेरिका और ये जो नाम नेहाद जंग है,
innocent people are being abducted. Our soldiers are being killed. There is death and destruction in Pakistan, and it is all due to the US so-called war on terrorism.
Recently, some missing persons who happened to be in the security agency's custody were produced before the Supreme Court. But the whereabouts of hundreds of others are still not known. The issue has attracted the attention of the country's key political figures. Several politicians, including the main opposition leader, has also visited the camp and promised to raise the issue in the parliament.
We
will raise our voices against the illegal abduction of thousands of innocent civilians. Our party will take up this issue in the parliament and will bring resolution to seek the early recovery of all the missing persons.
Some of the families at this protest camp have gone on a hunger strike for the release of their dear ones.
The abduction of Pakistanis began in 2001
when the then military ruler, General Pervez Musharraf, joined the US-led so-called war on terror. It is believed that over 10,000 Pakistani nationals have either been killed or gone missing due to the country's decision to back the US-led war. Kamran Yusuf, Press TV, Islamabad.
Israeli warplanes have launched an airstrike in the Gaza Strip, wounding at least 2 Palestinians. Palestinian sources say the injured are residents of the Zaytun neighborhood. Israel has launched numerous ground and air attacks on Gaza since the end of its 22-day war on the Strip in 2009. Many people have died in the attacks. Gaza has also been grappling with an all-out Israeli siege since 2007, when Hamas overwhelmingly won the elections in the Palestinian territory. The siege on Gaza has caused widespread hardship for the 1.5 million people living in the coastal enclave. You're watching the World News here on Press TV. These are the headlines this hour. The American soldier that revealed killings by the U.S. Army in Iraq and Afghanistan is formally charged. He faces life in prison. Furious Afghans try to storm a U.S. base as the death toll from protests against the burning of the Holy Quran rises to 20. Demonstrations have also spread to Pakistan. And Israeli warplanes once again target the besieged Gaza Strip. At least 2 Palestinians are injured. On the next half of the bulletin, right here on Press TV, we'll bring you more on the devastating storms in the U.S. Don't go away.
It's a bed in, folks.
Welcome back. You're watching the World News here on Press TV. We're going to start this half of the bulletin with news coming out of Bahrain, where Saudi-backed forces have attacked anti-regime protesters once again. The demonstrators in Al-Malikiya came out to voice support for jailed human rights activist Abdul Hadi Al-Khawaja. He was detained last year and sentenced to life in prison by a military court. Meanwhile, Bahrainis held anti-regime protests in several other towns and villages across the kingdom. The protesters called for the downfall of the Al Khalifa regime and expressed support for the uprising in Saudi Arabia. The demonstrators condemned the crackdowns on protests in both Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. The UN and the Arab League have named former UN Chief Kofi Annan as their special envoy to the Syrian crisis. In a joint statement, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and his Arab League counterpart Nabil Al-Arabi said they were, quote, grateful to Annan for accepting his important mission at a critical time for Syrians. The statement also said Annan will, quote, promote a peaceful solution to the Syrian crisis. Annan served 2 terms as UN Secretary General from 1997 through 2006. He will now act under a mandate designed by a UN General Assembly resolution passed last week, as well as Arab League resolutions on Syria. Well, 7 days to Iran's key parliamentary elections, official campaigning for the vote has begun. The campaigning will end just 24 hours before the voting starts.